the look she couldn't control. The moment the music changed, everyone felt it. The lights dimmed just enough to soften the edges of the grand ballroom, and a slow, confident rhythm rolled through the speakers. Smooth, deliberate, impossible to ignore. Conversations lowered. Laughter paused. Eyes turned toward the center of the room. And that was when Lena Hart felt it. That sharp, unwelcome twist in her chest. She stood near the marble column, champagne glass trembling slightly in her hand, her perfectly practiced smile frozen on her lips. On the surface she looked flawless. Tailored emerald dress, hair swept back elegantly, posture straight and composed. To anyone watching, she was the picture of calm confidence. But inside, something ugly stirred. Because another man had just asked him to dance. And Lena couldn't hide her jealousy. Not really. Across the room, Ethan Cole hesitated for only half a second before offering a polite smile to the woman standing in front of him. She was laughing softly now, her hand already resting lightly on his arm, clearly pleased with herself. Younger. Louder. More obvious. Lena watched as Ethan nodded. Agreed. And followed her onto the dance floor. The music swelled and the crowd subtly shifted to give them space. It was supposed to be harmless. Just a dance. Just a party. But Lena's fingers tightened around her glass. She told herself she didn't care. She told herself she had no right to care. After all, Ethan was just her +1. The quiet man she'd brought to the annual Blackwood Foundation gala because she didn't want to arrive alone. The man most people in that room had already dismissed the moment they saw him. Simple black suit, no flashy watch, no loud introductions. To them, Ethan Cole was invisible. And Lena had let them believe that. She had learned long ago how to survive rooms like this. Rooms filled with donors, executives, socialites, and people who measured worth by job titles and last names. Lena Hart belonged here, at least that's what she told herself. She worked hard for her position as a senior event coordinator at Blackwood. She knew the rules. She knew how to smile, how to network, how to climb. And she knew how to choose people who wouldn't threaten her image. Ethan had seemed safe. Too safe. When she'd invited him earlier that week, she'd framed it casually. Just a gala. Free food. Dancing. You don't have to impress anyone. He'd smiled that small, unreadable smile of his. I don't really do impressing. She'd laughed then, relieved. Now, watching him glide across the floor with effortless confidence, Lena felt something crack. He wasn't awkward. He wasn't unsure. He moved with a calm precision that made heads turn. The woman dancing with him leaned closer, clearly enjoying herself. Other guests whispered. A few smiles followed them. And Lena hated the way her stomach tightened. Because suddenly, Ethan didn't look like someone who needed her invitation. He looked like someone who didn't need anyone's approval at all. Relax, Lena muttered to herself, forcing another sip of champagne. It's nothing. But her eyes betrayed her. She watched the way Ethan listened, the way he smiled politely, the way he spun his partner with a smooth confidence that came from somewhere deeper than practice. This wasn't luck. This wasn't a fluke. This was competence. And Lena realized, far too late, that she had underestimated him. She remembered how her colleagues had reacted when she arrived earlier with Ethan. Raised eyebrows. Tight smiles. Friend of yours? Someone had asked, glancing at Ethan's modest suit. Yes, Lena had replied quickly. Just a friend. The way she'd said it, dismissive, distancing, made her chest ache now. She'd done that. She'd been ashamed. Ashamed of someone who had done nothing wrong. On the dance floor, Ethan laughed at something the woman said. It wasn't loud, but it was genuine. Warm. The kind of laugh that came from comfort, not performance. Lena felt heat rise to her face. Why does this bother me? She wasn't jealous because another woman was dancing with him. She was jealous because she had never bothered to see him like this. The song ended to polite applause. Ethan thanked his partner, escorting her back with impeccable manners. As he turned, his gaze found Lena instantly. Not accusatory. Not smug. Just curious. And that was worse. He walked toward her, unhurried, as if he had all the time in the world. You okay? He asked quietly. Lena forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? Ethan studied her for a moment. He always seemed to notice more than he said. I was asked to dance, he added gently. Not defensive. Just honest. I saw, Lena replied too quickly. Silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable. Around them, the party resumed, glasses clinking, deals whispered, laughter rehearsed. But Lena felt exposed in a way she hadn't expected. She had brought Ethan here thinking she was the one with power. And now, for the first time that night, she wasn't so sure. Because something about the way people were starting to look at him, starting to notice him, made her uneasy. Not because he was taking attention from her, but because she was afraid of what she might discover about him. And about herself. The room that judged too quickly. The shift was subtle at first, but once Lena noticed it, she couldn't unsee it. Whispers. Side glances. The way conversations paused for half a second whenever Ethan passed by. The Blackwood Foundation Gala was famous for its elegance, but beneath the crystal chandeliers and polished smiles lived something far less beautiful: judgment. This room ran on hierarchy. On titles. On assumptions made in seconds. And Ethan Cole didn't fit anyone's expectations. Lena felt it as she guided him toward the donor lounge, a quieter area reserved for executives and high-level sponsors. She'd been invited there dozens of times. It was where connections were made, where futures quietly shifted over expensive drinks. Ethan followed beside her calmly, hands in his pockets, gaze observant but relaxed. "You don't have to come in here," Lena said suddenly, lowering her voice. Ethan glanced at her, not offended, just curious. "You sure?" "Yes," she replied too fast. "It's mostly work talk." What she didn't say was they won't respect you. The thought hit her like a slap. When did I start thinking like them? But the truth was cruel and immediate. She didn't want him standing beside her while people asked questions she couldn't answer. Questions about who he was. What he did. Why he belonged. She told herself she was protecting him. Deep down she knew she was protecting herself. Ethan studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right. I'll grab some water." As he walked away, Lena felt a strange mix of relief and guilt settle in her chest. Inside the donor lounge the air was heavier. Richer. More performative. Lena slipped back into her role effortlessly, smiling, greeting familiar faces, laughing at jokes she'd heard 100 times. "Lena." "Darling," said Marissa Blackwood, one of the foundation's board members. "I saw you arrive earlier." "Good evening, Marissa," Lena replied warmly. "And who was that with you?" Marissa asked casually, sipping her drink. "An assistant?" The word stung. Lena hesitated. "A friend." Marissa hummed, clearly unimpressed. "Interesting choice for tonight." The comment was light, but the message was sharp. Lena forced a polite laugh, but her cheeks burned. Across the room she spotted Ethan near the bar. Alone now. A few feet away from the laughter. From the power circles. From her. And suddenly, the memory of him dancing, confident, unbothered, clashed painfully with the way this room was treating him. He didn't belong here because no one had allowed him to belong. A man in a navy tuxedo approached Ethan, clearly emboldened by alcohol and entitlement. Lena's stomach tightened. She couldn't hear the words, but she saw the tone. The condescending smile. The exaggerated nods. The subtle way the man leaned in, invading Ethan's space. Ethan remained calm. Too calm. The man laughed loudly, gesturing toward the room, then toward Ethan's suit. Lena felt her pulse quicken. She excused herself abruptly and stepped closer, just enough to hear the tail end of the conversation. "Just saying, events like this aren't exactly open invite," the man said, grinning. "You have to earn your place." Ethan smiled politely. "I see." The man scoffed. "Don't take it personally. Some people are just guests." Lena stepped forward before she could stop herself. "He's with me." Both men turned. The man's smile shifted, calculating now. "Oh, you're Lena Hart, right?" "Yes." "Didn't realize you were bringing charity cases now," he said lightly, as if it were a joke. The words hung in the air. Lena's heart pounded. She waited for Ethan to react. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't bristle. Didn't defend himself. He simply met the man's eyes. "Enjoy your evening," Ethan said calmly, stepping back. And that, somehow, was worse. Because Lena saw it then, the way Ethan was used to this. Used to being underestimated. Used to being dismissed by people who thought wealth equaled worth. The man chuckled and walked away, satisfied. Lena turned to Ethan, anger and shame colliding in her chest. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "He had no right." "It's fine," Ethan interrupted gently. "No, it's not," she insisted. "They're awful." He looked at her, really looked at her, and something unreadable crossed his face. "They're predictable." The word hit her harder than anger would have. Predictable. Because she had been predictable too. Later, as the night deepened, the foundation's director took the stage for a short address. Applause followed. Glasses were raised. And then came the announcement. "We'd like to recognize a special guest tonight," the director said, smiling broadly. Someone whose contributions to social impact and community investment have gone largely unseen. Lena barely listened at first, until she heard the name. Ethan Cole. Her breath caught. A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. Ethan froze. The director gestured toward him. Please join us. For a split second, Lena saw hesitation flicker across Ethan's face. Then he straightened and walked toward the stage. The room went quiet. Lena felt her heart hammer as whispers erupted around her. Who is he? Did you hear that name? Isn't he? The man who'd mocked him earlier looked suddenly pale. Ethan stepped under the lights, calm as ever. The director smiled warmly. Many of you may not recognize him, he continued, but Mr. Cole is the lead architect behind several international initiatives that fund education, housing, and disaster relief across 3 continents. Gasp. Lena's knees nearly buckled. Ethan took the microphone. Good evening, he said simply. His voice was steady, confident, unapologetic. I don't attend many events like this, he continued, eyes scanning the room. Not because I don't belong, but because I prefer my work to speak louder than my presence. The silence was electric. Lena felt tears sting her eyes, because suddenly she understood. The man she'd tried to hide, the man she'd underestimated, was the most powerful person in the room. When silence became apologies, the applause didn't come immediately. It crept in slowly, hesitant at first, scattered claps breaking the stunned silence. Then more joined, louder, faster, until the entire ballroom filled with sound that felt less like celebration and more like atonement. Lena stood frozen. Her hands were cold. Her pulse roared in her ears. Ethan Cole, her Ethan, stood on that stage with a quiet authority that no tailored suit or inherited fortune could buy. He didn't bask in the attention. He didn't smile triumphantly. He simply existed in the truth. And the room bent around it. The man who had mocked him earlier shifted uncomfortably near the bar, suddenly fascinated by his drink. Marissa Blackwood's smile had stiffened into something cautious, her eyes sharp with recalculation. Lena felt exposed. Because the spotlight wasn't only on Ethan. It was on everyone who had judged him, including her. Ethan continued speaking, his tone calm but firm. I believe respect shouldn't be conditional, he said. It shouldn't depend on what someone wears or who they arrive with, or how loudly they announce their success. His gaze flicked briefly toward the crowd. Then, just for a heartbeat, it found Lena. Not accusing, just honest. And I believe spaces like this have the power to do real good, he added. But only if we remember why we're here. The director thanked him, shaking his hand enthusiastically. Applause followed again, this time louder, desperate almost. Ethan stepped down from the stage. And suddenly he wasn't invisible anymore. People swarmed him. Executives who hadn't spared him a glance earlier now leaned forward eagerly. Hands were extended. Cards exchanged. Laughter forced too loud, compliments layered thick with regret. Lena watched it all from a distance. She felt like a ghost at her own event. Because for the first time she wasn't sure where she stood. She made her way toward him slowly, her heels heavy against the marble floor. Each step felt like a confession. Before she could reach him, the man from earlier, the one who'd called Ethan a guest, cut in front of her. Mr. Cole, he said, voice suddenly respectful, even nervous. I had no idea who you were earlier. If I offended you. Ethan met his eyes. You did, he said simply. The man swallowed hard. But that's not the point, Ethan continued. The point is, you wouldn't have said what you said if you had known who I was. And that's the problem. The words landed like a verdict. The man flushed, nodded awkwardly, and backed away. Lena felt something twist painfully in her chest. She stepped forward. Ethan, she said softly. He turned. Up close, she could see it now, the exhaustion behind his composure, the familiarity of disappointment he wore too well. I didn't know, she whispered. I know, he replied. That hurt more than anger ever could have. They moved to a quieter corner, away from the crowd's noise. Lena struggled to find words that didn't sound hollow. I shouldn't have brought you here like that, she said. I shouldn't have. She stopped, swallowing hard. I was ashamed. The confession burned. Ethan studied her carefully, not unkindly. Of me? He asked. No, she said quickly. Of myself. Of how I thought. Of how I let this room define worth. Her eyes shimmered. When you danced earlier, she admitted, voice breaking slightly, I felt jealous. Not because of her. But because I realized I didn't really see you. I let everyone else decide who you were. Ethan exhaled slowly. That happens more often than you think. The weight of that sentence settled between them. I didn't tell you what I do, he continued gently, because I wanted to see how people treated me without context. Without armor. Lena winced. And now you know, he added. How this room treats people it thinks are small. Her throat tightened. I'm sorry, she said. Not just for tonight. For earlier. For trying to keep you out of the lounge. For worrying about how you'd reflect on me. Ethan looked away briefly, then back. Thank you for saying that, he said quietly. They stood there, suspended between truths. Across the room, Marissa Blackwood approached, smile carefully neutral. Mr. Cole, she said. We'd love to discuss potential partnerships. Ethan raised a hand politely. Another time, he replied. Tonight, I'm done networking. Marissa blinked, clearly unused to being dismissed. Lena felt something inside her shift. Ethan turned to her. Do you want to leave? He asked. She nodded without hesitation. Yes. They exited the ballroom together, the noise fading behind them. Outside, the night air was cool and grounding. Lena exhaled shakily. I think this is the first time I've ever walked away from an opportunity, she said. Ethan smiled faintly. Sometimes that's the real power move. She laughed softly, then grew serious. I don't want to be that person, she said. The one who judges first. The one who hides behind status. Ethan met her gaze. Then don't be. Silence settled, comfortable this time. I didn't dance with you earlier, Lena said quietly, because I was afraid of what people would think. Ethan extended his hand. There's no one watching now. Her heart skipped. She took it. And under the soft glow of streetlights, far from chandeliers and judgment, Lena danced with him. Slow, unpolished, real. No audience. No titles. Just truth. The cost of seeing clearly. The city looked different in the early morning light. Lena noticed it as she stood by the kitchen window of her apartment, coffee untouched on the counter behind her. The streets below were quieter, softer, stripped of the confidence and noise that filled them at night. She felt the same way. Stripped. Exposed. The gala replayed in her mind like a loop she couldn't turn off. Ethan's calm voice on stage, the way the room shifted, the sharp burn of recognition when she realized how close she'd come to becoming exactly like the people she despised. She'd built her career by reading rooms. By understanding power dynamics. By adapting. But she'd never stopped to ask what it was doing to her. Her phone buzzed. A message from work. Marissa Blackwood. We need to talk. This morning. My office. Lena closed her eyes. She knew what this was about. At Blackwood Foundation, image mattered. Optics mattered. And walking out of the gala with the most talked about man in the room, without explanation, had not gone unnoticed. An hour later, Lena sat across from Marissa's polished desk. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating framed photos of galas past, smiling donors, raised glasses, perfectly curated success. Marissa folded her hands. You embarrassed us last night, she said bluntly. Lena inhaled slowly. I didn't mean to. But you did, Marissa replied. You left early. With Mr. Cole. People noticed. Lena lifted her chin. People also noticed how he was treated before they knew who he was. Marissa's eyes narrowed. This isn't about morality, she said coolly. This is about professionalism. Then why did professionalism only matter once his status was revealed? Lena asked quietly. The room fell silent. Marissa studied her, clearly recalculating. You're very good at what you do, Marissa said finally. But you're also replaceable. The words landed like a threat. Lena felt fear rise, real fear. This job had been her stability. Her identity. But beneath that fear was something new. Clarity. If being professional means ignoring disrespect, Lena said calmly, then maybe I need to rethink what success looks like. Marissa leaned back, unimpressed. You're letting emotions cloud your judgment. Or, Lena countered, I'm finally using it. The meeting ended without resolution. When Lena stepped back onto the street, her hands were shaking. She texted Ethan before she could overthink it. Can we talk? His reply came almost immediately. Of course. Café on 8th? They sat across from each other an hour later, sunlight filtering through the windows, the clink of cups grounding her nerves. Lena told him everything. About the meeting. The threat. The fear. I don't know if I did the right thing, she admitted. Walking away felt right, but now I'm scared. Ethan listened without interrupting, hands wrapped around his mug. When I was younger, he said slowly, I used to think dignity was something people gave you. Like permission. He met her eyes. It's not. It's something you decide to keep, even when it costs you. Lena swallowed. Why didn't you ever tell me? She asked. About who you are. What you've built. Ethan smiled faintly. Because I've learned that when people know, they treat you differently. Kinder. More patient. Less honest. He paused. I wanted to know how you'd treat me without the armor. The words stung, but they were fair. I failed, Lena whispered. No, Ethan said gently. You noticed, and you corrected yourself. That matters. She exhaled shakily. I don't want to lose myself again, she said. Even if it costs me my job. Ethan leaned back, studying her with a softness she hadn't seen before. Then let me tell you something, he said. Lena listened. Years ago, Ethan had walked away from a lucrative corporate role after watching executives cut funding to a community housing project because it didn't photograph well. He'd used his own money to rebuild it. Quietly. Without branding. That's why I don't care about rooms like that, he said. I've seen what power looks like without compassion. Lena felt tears gather. I want to be better, she said. Ethan smiled. You already are. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. Blackwood HR. We're restructuring. Your position is under review. Lena stared at the screen. Fear surged. Then steadied. She looked up at Ethan. I might lose everything. He reached across the table, covering her hand. Or, he said softly, you might finally gain something real. She squeezed his fingers. For the first time she believed him. When respect finally found its home. The email arrived at 9:12 a.m. Lena stared at the subject line longer than she needed to. Decision regarding your position. She had known it was coming. Still, her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The message was short, polite, final. Her role at the Blackwood Foundation was being eliminated as part of a strategic restructuring. No thank you. No acknowledgement of years of late nights, flawless events, quiet problem solving. Just an ending. Lena closed her laptop slowly. For a moment, the silence felt unbearable. Then she exhaled. Strangely, she didn't feel broken. She felt clean. Later that afternoon, she met Ethan at the same cafe. When she told him she expected pity, she didn't get it. Instead, he smiled, not softly, not sadly, but with quiet certainty. How do you feel? He asked. Terrified, she admitted. But also, lighter. That's usually how it starts, Ethan said. She laughed weakly. You make it sound like losing your job is a gift. Not losing, he corrected. Letting go. Over the next few days, Lena watched the aftermath of the gala unfold from the outside. Articles appeared. Social media clips circulated. Comment sections exploded. People didn't just praise Ethan. They criticized the room. The whispers. The arrogance. The way power only recognized power. One headline stopped Lena cold. The gala that exposed its own hypocrisy. Blackwood Foundation released a public statement. Carefully worded, deeply defensive. Donations dipped. Board members distanced themselves. Marissa Blackwood quietly stepped back from public appearances. Justice didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived with consequences. One evening, Ethan invited Lena to visit a space she hadn't seen before. They drove out of the city, past glass towers and manicured streets, until the buildings changed, older, humbler, real. A renovated community center stood at the end of the block. Children laughed inside. Murals covered the walls. This is where it started, Ethan said. For me. Lena walked through the doors and felt something shift in her chest. The energy here was different. Honest. Alive. People greeted Ethan warmly, not with awe, but familiarity. Ethan. Good to see you. Come look at what we finished. No titles. No hierarchy. Just respect. This is what I invest in, he told her quietly. People. Potential. Dignity. Lena's eyes burned. You could have owned every room, she said. But you chose this. I don't need rooms, Ethan replied. I need purpose. They stood side by side watching a group of kids practice a dance routine, awkward, joyful, fearless. Lena smiled. You know, she said softly, I used to think dancing was about being seen. Ethan glanced at her. And now? Now I think it's about being free. That night, as they walked under open sky, Lena stopped suddenly. I was jealous, she said. At the party? Ethan raised an eyebrow, amused. I know. But not because another woman danced with you, she continued. Because I was afraid of losing control. Afraid of what it meant if I was wrong about you. About me. Ethan took her hands. Jealousy isn't failure, he said. Refusing to learn from it is. She met his eyes. Ask me to dance, she said. Right there. On the quiet sidewalk. Ethan smiled and did. No music but the city hum. No audience but passing strangers. No judgment left to fear. Lena laughed as she moved with him, unpolished and unguarded. For the first time she wasn't performing. Weeks later, Lena received another email. Different sender. Different tone. Ethan had funded a new initiative, one focused on ethical leadership, access and inclusion. And he wanted her to lead it. Not because of her resume. Because of her choice. The first event was small. No chandeliers. No champagne towers. No velvet ropes. But the room was full. And everyone belonged. Lena stood at the front, steady and calm. She looked out at the faces, not measuring, not ranking. Just seeing. Ethan watched from the back, proud but unobtrusive. She caught his eye and smiled. This time there was no jealousy. Only gratitude. Because respect, once finally learned, had found its way home.